What's the largest planet in the solar system? If you say Jupiter, you are correct. However, the planet is not just huge, it contains lots of mysteries that have been fascinating scientists since its discovery. Thanks to multiple spacecraft visiting the planet, we've expanded our knowledge of the jumbo planet significantly. What have scientists recently discovered on Jupiter, and how did the discoveries affect the Sun and our own planet? In this video, we bring you the insane new discoveries scientists just made from the images of Jupiter sent to the Earth. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system, named after the king of the gods in Roman mythology. This gas giant presents as an enigma bathed in colorful clouds assaulted by strong winds that sweep below circles of rings and moons. Jupiter is simply gigantic. The planet is heavier than double the mass of all the other solar system planets put together. In fact, the biggest storm on the planet, the Great Red Spot, covers an area twice the width of Earth. You will see more wonders of the Great Red Spot later in this video. By volume, Jupiter is large enough to contain more than 1,300 Earths. To put that in perspective, if Jupiter were the size of a basketball, Earth would be the size of a grape. Did you know that Jupiter was probably the first planet to be created in the solar system? Scientists say it was formed from the leftover gases in the formation of the Sun. But more interestingly, if Jupiter had been 80 times larger when it formed, it would have been a star. Not a star in the same league as the Sun, but a star nonetheless. In fact, some astronomers call Jupiter a failed star, but that's not really an appropriate description. This is because Jupiter does not have nearly enough mass to trigger a fusion reaction in its core. This is how stars generate energy, by fusing hydrogen atoms together under extreme heat and pressure to create helium, releasing light and heat in the process. Jupiter's orbit averages about 483,682,810 miles, or 778,412,020 kilometers from the Sun. This means it is 5.203 times farther than Earth's average distance from the Sun. At perihelion, that is the point Jupiter is closest to the Sun, it is 460,276,100 miles, or 740,742,600 kilometers away. But at aphelion, or the farthest distance that Jupiter reaches from the Sun, the distance jumps to 507,089,500 miles, or 816,081,400 kilometers. As the third brightest object in the solar system after Venus and the Moon, you can see Jupiter without the aid of an instrument. Many people have seen the planet but might not know what it is. Chances are, if you see a really bright star high in the sky, then you're looking at Jupiter. Even simple binoculars can help you see Jupiter in more detail, but if you can get a telescope, you will get a better view. You might even spot some of Jupiter's numerous moons. If you were to find yourself on Jupiter, what does the planet look like? The jumbo planet has an atmosphere similar to the Sun, which is not surprising since there are theories Jupiter came from leftovers of the Sun. But that means an atmosphere made up mostly of hydrogen and helium. However, digging into the planet, you will find a core that is partially dissolved. The colorful light and dark bands that you can observe covering Jupiter are created by strong east-west winds in the planet's upper atmosphere. They move at a dizzying speed of more than 335 miles per hour, or 539 kilometers per hour. Also, the white clouds found in the light zones contain crystals of frozen ammonia. However, the darker clouds contain chemicals found in the dark belts. At the deepest visible levels are blue clouds. One fascinating thing about these bands is that they are not static, they keep changing. And when it rains instead of water, what you get is diamond. Scientists have discovered the magnetic field of Jupiter, which tops the list among all the planets. It is a whopping 20,000 times stronger than the Earth's. This magnetic field is so strong that it traps electrons and other charged particles, causing radiations that are stronger than the level that can kill humans. The moons, which we talk about more later, are the direct recipients of this intense radiation. In fact, apart from the Sun, Jupiter emits the most radio waves of any object in the solar system. The interaction of Jupiter's gravitational field and that of the Sun also influences a group of more than 11,000 intriguing asteroids clustered into the regions preceding and following Jupiter in its orbit around the Sun. These asteroids are known as the Trojans, named after characters in Homer's epic The Iliad, a popular tale about the Trojan War. Many people have younger and smaller siblings that they will protect jealously. However, that is not the case with Jupiter. Instead of being a protective big brother to the Earth, the jumbo planet actually puts us in harm's way. Using computer simulations, scientists have found the largest planet in our solar system's gravity hurls deadly asteroids towards us instead of keeping them away as previously assumed. Scary, right? A paper worked on by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory suggested evidence shows Jupiter was not a protector planet, using its own gravity to suck asteroids away from Earth's path. Jupiter's gravity may actually nudge some asteroids toward the Sun, where they stand a chance of colliding with our planet home. For many years, our understanding of the relationship between the Earth and Jupiter has been shaped by the Jupiter shield theory, which says the bigger planet acts like a giant space shield due to its huge mass, which causes it to suck in or deflect dangerous debris. But now, thanks to the work of Kevin Grazier, the shield theory is slowly falling out of favor. He published several papers explaining why he thinks Jupiter is a sniper rather than a shield. Actually, the relationship is complicated because Jupiter sometimes protects the Earth by deflecting comets away from the Earth. But new evidence proves that it's just as likely to take objects that come nowhere from the Earth and flings them in our direction. Of course, comet and asteroid strikes on the Earth are no jokes. You can ask the poor dinosaurs that went extinct. However, space is full of these dangerous objects, and the Earth needs protection, so it's important to establish whether Jupiter is a friend or foe. Interestingly, it took strikes by comets and asteroids on the Earth when it was young before all the ingredients needed for life were assembled, but they could as well wipe out the life they have created in a few seconds. Overall, Jupiter is our friend because it slings most of the comets coming from outside the solar system back out. There are even signs that it has taken hits on our behalf. The next discovery on Jupiter involved an event that scientists assumed was a comet strike on the planet, but turned out not to be so. What then exactly happened? From the Earth, astronomers noticed a flash that lasted only 2 seconds and was gone. They immediately suspected that the giant planet had been hit by something, although they didn't know how big the object was or how deep the atmosphere was penetrated. The next step was to begin searching for a black eye pattern left by former impactors, but they eventually turned to the Hubble telescope for help. But not even the telescope could sight anything as there was no sign of debris. The implication after 3 days was that the object that struck the planet did not descend beneath the clouds and explode as a fireball. If that had been the case, the dark sooty debris would definitely have been ejected to rain down onto the clouds, so it was assumed the flash came from a giant meteor burning high above Jupiter's cloud tops. Now we will talk about Jupiter's moon Io again in the next discovery by scientists. How did this Jupiter moon, known to be icy, get its dune? Current scientific understanding dictates that dunes by their nature are hills or ridges of sand piled up by the wind, and scientists in previous studies of Io, while describing its surface as containing some dune-like features, concluded the ridges could not be dunes since the forces from winds on Io are weak due to the moon's low-density atmosphere. The clue to the answer lies in data that are getting old already. During the Galileo's mission from 1989 to 2003, scientists were able to gather data so numerous that up to this day, nearly 20 years after, scientists are still poring over all the data. It was from this pile that the insights needed to understand what is happening on Io came from, and it had to do with volcanic activities so strong that they are reshaping the surface of the satellite and creating the large-scale features that resemble dunes. So Io's surface contains a mix of black solidified lava flows and sand, flowing effusive lava streams, and snows of sulfur dioxide. The group of researchers actually used mathematical equations to simulate the forces on a single grain of basalt or frost and calculate its path. When lava flows into sulfur dioxide beneath the moon's surface, its venting is dense and fast-moving enough to move grains on Io and possibly enable the formation of large-scale features like dunes. After devising or duplicating the mechanism by which the dunes could form, the researchers checked the photos of Io's surface taken by the Galileo spacecraft for corroboration. The spacing of the crests and the height-to-width ratios they observed were consistent with trends for dunes seen on Earth and other planets. Remember the Great Red Spot we talked about earlier? What exactly is it and what gives it the reddish hue? The Great Red Spot is a giant storm blowing like a hurricane non-stop for more than 350 years. This storm was first identified by Italian astronomer Giovanni Cassini in 1665. Its edge spins in the counterclockwise direction at speeds between 270 to 425 miles per hour, or 430 to 680 kilometers per hour. This counterclockwise direction makes it an anticyclone storm. Coming to the color, which can range from brick red to slightly brown, probably comes from small amounts of sulfur and phosphorus in the ammonia crystals in Jupiter's clouds. The spot has been shrinking for quite some time, although the rate may be slowing in recent years. However, Jupiter has many other storms apart from the Great Red Spot. According to data from the Juno spacecraft this year, Jupiter's gargantuan polar cyclones are driven by convection or heat rising from lower altitudes to the higher atmosphere. This is basically the same way ocean vortexes work on Earth. You can't talk about Jupiter without mentioning its moons. With 79 known moons, this planet is the most endowed in the solar system. The four largest moons of Jupiter, called Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, were discovered by Galileo Galilei, which is why they are sometimes called the Galilean moons. Jupiter has the largest moon in the solar system, known as Ganymede. This supersized moon is actually larger than Pluto and Mercury. Ganymede has the distinction of being the only moon known to have its own magnetic field. The Juno mission captured the terrifying sound from the magnetic field last year. That is not all about Ganymede. This planet-sized moon has at least one ocean between layers of ice. However, studies suggest the moon may contain multiple layers of ice and water stacked on top of one another, along with atmospheric water vapor first spotted last year. We will hear more about this fascinating moon as it will be studied in detail by the European Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, or JUICE, spacecraft that will launch in 2023 and arrive at Jupiter's system in 2030. Another Jupiter moon worth studying is Io. This moon is the most volcanically active body known in our solar system. As Io orbits Jupiter, the planet's immense gravity causes tides in Io's solid surface that rise 300 feet or 100 meters high and generate enough heat to maintain the volcanism. These volcanoes release more than 1 ton of material every second into the space around the moon, contributing to strange radio waves emanating from Jupiter. The yellow-orange pepperoni pizza coloration of Io is caused by the sulfur the volcanoes spew. You also have to talk about Jupiter's rings. It has 3 rings, as confirmed by NASA's Voyager 1. While other planets like Saturn and Neptune have more prominent rings, Jupiter has a set of its own composed of dust particles coming from some of the moons. The main ring is about 20 miles or 30 kilometers thick and more than 4,000 miles or 6,400 kilometers wide. Now, if you have heard of the Great Red Spot on Jupiter, are you aware that there is a Great Blue Spot on the planet as well? What is the Great Blue Spot all about? It is magnetic. A team of NASA researchers, including Jack Conanay, came up with the most detailed map of the planet's magnetic field, and it revealed something spectacular. The map is compiled from data obtained from 32 orbits during Juno's prime mission. The group of researchers claimed their new map provides new insights into Jupiter's mysterious Great Blue Spot, a magnetic anomaly at the planet's equator. Juno data indicate that a change in the gas giant's magnetic field has occurred during the spacecraft's 5 years in orbit. What is happening is that the Great Blue Spot is drifting eastward at a speed of about 2 inches or 4 centimeters per second relative to the rest of Jupiter's interior. At that rate, the Great Blue Spot will go around the planet completely in about 350 years. In contrast, the more popular Great Red Spot, the long-lived atmospheric anticyclone just south of Jupiter's equator that refused to die, is drifting westward at a relatively rapid clip, going round the planet in only about 4.5 years. Apart from this, the new map shows that Jupiter's zonal winds are pulling the Great Blue Spot apart. Zonal winds are jet streams that run east to west and west to east, which gives Jupiter its distinctive banded appearance. This means that the zonal winds measured on the surface of the planet reach deep into the planet's interior. The new magnetic field map also enables Juno scientists to make comparisons with Earth's magnetic field. The data suggests to the team that dynamo action, that is, the mechanism by which a celestial body generates a magnetic field in Jupiter's interior, occurs in metallic hydrogen beneath a layer expressing helium rain. Still from the trove of data from the Galileo mission, scientists have unlocked another secret about the Jovian planet. This time, for the first time, researchers were able to determine the origin of the high-energy ions that surround Jupiter, forming an inner belt. They're actually oxygen and sulfur ions. The scientists believe the ions came from a volcanic eruption on the moon Io. The team discovered an unexpectedly high concentration of high-energy oxygen ions near the orbit of the moon Amalthea, which orbits Jupiter further inward. The concentration could not have been explained by Io's volcanic activity, implying that a previously unknown ion source must be at work. The only explanation for the increased concentration of oxygen ions is another local source in the innermost region of the radiation belts. The release of oxygen following the collisions of sulfur ions with the fine dust particles of Jupiter's rings constitutes one possibility, as the researchers' computer simulations show. The rings, which are much fainter than the Saturnian ones, extend approximately as far as the orbit of Thebe. However, it is also conceivable that low-frequency electromagnetic waves in the magnetospheric environment of the innermost radiation belts heat oxygen ions to the observed energies. The search for life outside of Earth has taken many forms. Mars, our neighboring world, looks like it was once habitable, perhaps to Venus despite its current hellish conditions. But in recent years, scientists' gazes have been drawn elsewhere. What about the moons of Jupiter? But first, what evidence do scientists look for when searching for life on other planets? Dr. Anne Jungblut, a specialist in life living in extreme conditions, and Dr. Paul Kenrick, a specialist on the early evolution of life, explain what they are looking for. Water. Almost all the processes that make up life on Earth can be broken down into chemical reactions, and most of those reactions require a liquid to break down substances so they can move and interact freely. Liquid water is an essential requirement for life on Earth because it functions as a solvent. It is capable of dissolving substances and enabling key chemical reactions in animal, plant, and microbial cells. Carbon. Many complex molecules are needed to perform the thousands of functions sustaining complex life. Carbon is the simple building block that organisms need to form organic compounds, such as proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Carbon is one of the most abundant chemical elements on Earth and a major part of all living organisms. Therefore, one working hypothesis is that life on other planets might also be carbon-based. Nitrogen. Carbon is a fundamental component of organic compounds, but it can't do it alone. The complex proteins required for life are built up from smaller compounds called amino acids, simple organic compounds that contain nitrogen. Nitrogen is also needed to make DNA and RNA, the carriers of the genetic code for life on Earth. Many bacteria can convert nitrogen from the atmosphere into a form that is used in living cells. Other things scientists look for include phosphorus, sulfur, and location. The last item, location, determines the right distance from the sun or star which the planet or the other celestial body orbits. Earth, for example, falls into the Goldilocks zone, meaning it is just the right distance from the sun, not too hot or too cold to have liquid water on the surface. So what evidence of life have scientists found on Jupiter's moons? Much attention has been paid to Europa, one of the moons. With a diameter of 3,100 kilometers, Europa is slightly smaller than the Earth's moon. As Europa orbits Jupiter around 718 million kilometers from the Sun, the surface temperature never rises above minus 160 degrees Celsius. A new model from NASA scientists support the theory that the interior ocean in Jupiter's moon Europa would be able to sustain life. In addition, they have calculated that this water, believed to be an ocean under the surface ice shell, could have been formed by the breakdown of water-containing minerals due to either tidal forces or radioactive decay. This work, which is not yet peer-reviewed, is presented for the first time at the virtual Goldschmidt Conference and may have implications for other moons in the solar system. Europa is one of the largest moons in the solar system. Since the flybys of the Voyager and Galileo spacecraft, scientists have held that the surface crust floats on a subsurface ocean. However, the origins and composition of this ocean have been unclear. The researchers based at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California modeled geochemical reservoirs within the interior of Europa using data from the Galileo mission. Lead researcher Mohit Malwani Daswani said they were able to model the composition and physical properties of the core, silicate layer, and ocean. The team found that different minerals lose water and volatiles at different depths and temperatures. They added up these volatiles estimated to have been lost from the interior and found that they are consistent with the current ocean's predicted mass, meaning that they are probably present in the ocean. The researchers found that ocean worlds such as Europa can be formed by metamorphism. This means heating and increased pressure caused by early radioactive decay or later subsurface tidal movement would cause the breakdown of water-containing minerals and the release of the trapped water. They also found that this ocean would originally have been mildly acidic, with high concentrations of carbon dioxide, calcium, and sulfate. They initially thought the ocean could still be rather sulfuric, but their simulations, coupled with data from the Hubble Space Telescope showing chloride on Europa's surface, suggest that the water most likely became chloride-rich. In other words, its composition became more like oceans on Earth. For this reason, the scientists concluded the ocean could be quite habitable for life. According to the scientists, Europa is one of our best chances of finding life in our solar system. NASA's Europa Clipper mission will launch in the next few years, and so these results could help the agency with the mission which will investigate Europa's habitability. Their models suggested that the oceans in other moons, such as Europa's neighbor Ganymede and Saturn's moon Titan, may also have formed by similar processes. The researchers have now teamed up with groups in Nantes and Prague to try to identify if seafloor volcanoes may have contributed to the evolution of the chloride-rich water on Europa. NASA has recently released new high-resolution photos of Europa showing possible exploration sites to test these findings. In all of this, you may be asking if there is a possibility of life on Jupiter. Data from NASA's Juno probe indicates that about 0.25% of the molecules in the atmosphere over Jupiter's equator is composed of water. Let us save you the mathematical calculation and expression of that 0.25%. That 0.25% is based on a prevalence of water's components, hydrogen and oxygen, 3 times more than at the Sun. Amazing! Why this data is amazing and shocking was that NASA's Galileo data about Jupiter was different. After this latest discovery, scientists checked Galileo's result and compared, and they discovered something. What did they discover? They discovered that the result of Galileo's was drier than that of Juno. Galileo's results sent back data showing 10 times less water than scientists predicted, and more weirdly, the amount of water appeared to increase the deeper the spacecraft went into Jupiter's atmosphere. It happened that at the same time Galileo was plunging into Jupiter, there was a ground-based infrared telescope that was able to measure water concentrations at Jupiter. This telescope showed that Galileo may have accidentally hit a dry spot during its probe. This could mean only one thing: water is not well mixed deep in Jupiter's atmosphere. This is also proven by Juno during its first 8 flybys. It revealed that there is a lack of atmospheric mixing on the planet and its surrounding systems. Juno principal investigator at the Southwest Research Institute, Scott Bolton, said in a statement, "Just when we think we have things figured out, Jupiter reminds us how much we still have to learn." He added, "Juno's surprise discovery that the atmosphere was not well mixed, even well below the cloud tops, is a puzzle that we are still trying to figure out. No one would have guessed that water might be so variable across the planet." Working with the results of Galileo's probe and that of Juno, scientists will be able to get more details about Jupiter, the Jovian system, and the solar system. Jupiter is known to probably be the first planet to form. This indicates that Jupiter could have sucked up most of the gas and dust that the Sun's formation left behind. Then the question, how much water did Jupiter suck? Did its moons take part in the evaporation of water? Answers to these questions would lead scientists to identify the most plausible theories to explain its formation. We come back to the massive size of Jupiter because scientists have discovered the effect it has on the whole solar system. Thanks to its massive gravity, Jupiter has been fingered for pushing planets Neptune and Uranus away from the Sun. This is due to a theory known as the NICE model. which claims that Jupiter and other gas giants caused a phenomenon known as the Late Heavy Bombardment, a time when the Earth and other planets nearby were bombarded with debris. However, that was in the past, as Jupiter now plays a mostly protective role to our planet. Jupiter helps to keep asteroids and comets from bombarding Earth, protecting the inner planets by acting as the vacuum cleaner of the solar system. The enormous gravity it generates can suck in and absorb smaller objects, like the 1994 collision of Jupiter and comet Shoemaker-Levy 9. Jupiter can also propel them out of the solar system entirely, but that same gravity can still accelerate some of those objects toward the inner planets too, so it's a mixed blessing. In all of this, you may be asking if there is a possibility of life on Jupiter. Well, according to scientists, if life were to be on Jupiter, it would have to exist at a height literally in the clouds, where the temperature is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius. But studies suggest Jupiter has enough water to sustain life, so perhaps one day we will find evidence of life on Jupiter. In mid-2021, NASA released a 50-second audio clip at the American Geophysical Union AGU meeting. Hold up, what? 50-second audio is definitely no joke. Could it be that some aliens are planning to invade Earth? The audio clip was gotten from Juno's Ganymede flyby. It was generated from data captured on June 7, 2021, during the spacecraft's closest pass yet to Ganymede. The sound was similar to that of a robot or a dial-up modem. This discovery joined the list of fascinating discoveries of Jupiter alongside the presence of water molecules. The audio was captured by Juno's WAVES instrument, which was designed to measure radio and plasma waves detected in Jupiter's magnetosphere, the bubble of charged particles that envelop the planet. Commenting on the audio, Scott Bolton said, "The soundtrack is just wild enough to make you feel as if you were riding along as Juno sails past Ganymede for the first time in more than 2 decades." Scientists are still studying the wave data collected during the Juno flyby and attempting to decode what frequency changes are present within the recording mean. The next discovery involves an incredible similarity between the Earth and Jupiter. Look at the images below. Do you see the eerie similarities between the two? One image was taken on the Earth, while the other was taken on Jupiter, yet they look frighteningly alike. So what is going on here? On the left is a phytoplankton bloom in Earth's Norwegian Sea, while on the right you are looking at turbulent clouds in Jupiter's atmosphere. Here is NASA's explanation. The simplified model of Jupiter's pole shows that geometric patterns of vortices, like those observed on Jupiter, spontaneously emerge and survive forever. This means that the basic geometrical configuration of the planet allows these intriguing structures to form. Although Jupiter's energy system is on a scale much larger than Earth's, understanding the dynamics of the Jovian atmosphere could help us understand the physical mechanisms at play on our own planet. Oceanographers have used Juno's images to study the turbulent atmosphere at Jupiter's poles, helping us understand the forces that drive the storms there.